For over 20 years of my life, I was someone who struggled with being disciplined. I always just studied a few days before an exam, never had healthy eating habits, and I was addicted to my cell phone. And because I was not leading a very productive life, each night I would be consumed by this feeling of guilt and anxiety. But things look different today. I am now someone who gets up before the sun, gets 4 hours of deep, focused work in, trains martial arts, read books, eats healthy, and lifts weights. And I've been doing all these things consistently for over 4 years now. Because of living life this way, I am now the happiest and the most fulfilled version of myself. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 4 principles that allowed me to make this transformation possible. When you apply these principles to your life, then discipline is no longer that soul-draining, boring thing, but it now actually begins to feel fun. So let's get right into it. What I have realized about myself is that I need pleasure in my life to function. And in the past, I would get it from things that were not really good for me, but they were just easily accessible. And sure, they worked pretty well until a few years went by and I found myself addicted to them and feeling absolutely miserable. I remember that there were nights where I would have such high levels of anxiety. I would feel the anxiety right here in the middle of the chest. And I knew that I was feeling this way because I had doom scrolled pretty much the entire day. But as I got older, I learned that there is a second source of pleasure, one that is less accessible, but it is incredibly healthy for you. And this source is progress. I noticed that there were a few periods of my life where I was just focused and working hard and making progress towards one goal. And when I found myself occupied with this goal and making progress, then I did not really have the desire to fuel myself with instant pleasure. And ever since then, this principle has stuck with me. I call this the 2-fuel theory. You can either fuel your life from temporary pleasures that are bad for you, or you can work and make progress towards something that is meaningful to you. So I asked myself this question: what are the 1 or 2 areas of my life that I would like to make progress in? To me, the first one was growing my business, and the second one was becoming a better athlete. So now that I've figured out my new sources of pleasure, I designed my entire life around them. I knew that if each day I could get a couple of hours of work in these domains, then I would feel happy and content for the rest of the day. So I made sure I was sleeping at the right time, eating at the right time, just to ensure that when it came time to work on my business, I could actually focus. And when it came time to train, I was full of energy and recovered. One of the reasons why I really enjoyed playing video games was because there was this sense of leveling up. Like after really grinding the game and doing all these side quests, I could see my character's health bar increase. I could see him getting new armor, new weapons, more skills. To me, this aspect of video games, of just seeing levels or skill points increase, was just very fun. So I took this exact principle from video games and started applying it to my real life. I now started tracking the work that I was doing, and this changed my life. My life was now a video game. Each day I would spend a few hours working on my business, and then as soon as I would be done, I would add them to my tracker, and at the end of the month I would realize that I'd spent 60-70 hours on my business, done 20 MMA sessions, and this felt like the skill points that I had acquired. And honestly, this made doing tasks a lot more fun, knowing that all the hours that I was putting in were contributing to leveling me up. Like, go back down to my very first video and I dare you to watch it to the end. It was just so trash. But since that point, I've probably spent 2,000 hours creating videos on YouTube. And this video that you're watching now is the product of me leveling up. So I think to myself, imagine if I spent 4,000 hours on YouTube, where would my business be then? Or if I did 300 more MMA sessions, how much better would I be then? One of the reasons why I never made a serious attempt at getting discipline was because I had this illusion that life without discipline was just so much more fun. And if I actually got disciplined, then I would miss out on this fun and live a boring, bland life. But then it hit me. Was I even really happy? Playing video games for hours, sure, it pumped my brain full of dopamine at that moment, but it also gave me crippling anxiety and guilt each night. Sure, binge watching those reels did make me laugh at that moment, but it also fried my dopamine receptors and made me feel depressed and lethargic. That is when I realized that life without discipline is not fun at all. Yeah, you get these temporary bursts of pleasure, but my baseline level of happiness was incredibly low. However, once I started implementing some structure and rules in my life, things began to change. For example, I adopted this one rule that I am going to put my phone on flight mode for the first 3 to 4 hours of the day. This now meant that I started my day with work. I was not being bombarded with notifications, nor was I ruining my attention span with scrolling. And I noticed myself feeling happier living life based on this rule. So I asked myself, what are the other restrictions that I should be putting in my life that are actually good for me? I came up with rules that gave me better sleep. I came up with rules that gave me better health. And I realized that when I was living life based on these rules, even though I didn't get those temporary bursts of pleasure, but my baseline level of happiness was just so damn high. And now discipline stopped being this prison sentence, but it actually became something that made my life fun. In the past, each time I would get motivated and try to get my life back on track, I would just expect myself to be hyper disciplined from day one. To me, discipline was like a switch. It could be turned on or off. And all you had to do to turn it on was just to have good old-fashioned willpower. But this approach never really worked. I would always end up failing to be consistent. And then I would just bash myself. I would tell myself how useless and pathetic I actually was. But one day I had this thought that it would be pretty stupid for a person who has never actually trained to go to the gym and on his very first day attempt to deadlift 500 pounds. But yet that is exactly what I was doing when it came to discipline. I expected myself to just be this elite disciplined person even though I had just started out. This is when I completely boycotted this model that discipline is just a switch, you can flick it on and off. And I understood that discipline is a skill that needs to be developed. But there was just one problem. I didn't know how to develop this skill. That is when I started doing a bit of research and I came across this book called Atomic Habits. And this book changed my life. I could make an entire video on how this book is a must read, but to summarize it in a few sentences, this book is a collection of tools and principles that help you build the skill of discipline. As soon as I just stopped trying to brute force my way by using willpower and I actually started adopting some of the principles in this book, that is when my consistency skyrocketed. You know what the best part was? Discipline truly began to feel effortless. It had now become part of who I was. Now these 4 principles are key to having long-term discipline. But the truth is that there are dozens of tiny simple things that I implemented in my life to get really consistent. So make sure that you watch this video to learn more about them.